Welcome to another episode of The Amy Is Show. Today's guest is my very first female guest, and I'm so pumped to break the ice on the female space by having another female military veteran right here across from me, Kelsi Sheren. She is so incredible, the best story ever. We have so many similarities. I'm dying to get into it, but just a few things. She is the founder of the Brass and Unity brand, which covers a lot of different things. She's got a podcast, a book. She's a mindset coach. She's got a jewelry line. She's just really super incredible. So I can't wait to get into it. Here we are. Welcome to the show, Kelsi Sheren.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so pumped right now. I was going down rabbit holes learning about you over the last couple of days. And the more that I learn about you and the more that I unpack, I'm just, one, so excited that there's another woman out there on the planet who has such a similar journey to mine. You joined the military at 17. And just for everybody to kind of catch up to speed with us, you're from Canada. You were in the Canadian military. You were in the Army. And you joined at 17, which is the same age that I joined. And then we both ended up being over in Afghanistan roughly 1 year apart, which is so mind-blowing to me. And so I've not had a conversation with another woman about their time in the service since I've left. So you're literally the first female that I've talked to that was in the military and has had the same kind of walk that I've had. And there's so much to unpack here. And so I just kind of want to catch everybody up with a couple fun facts I learned about you. So you were an artillery gunner in the Canadian Army, which that alone is just so incredible. Here in the United States, females couldn't even join the military in the combat arms until 2016. And so the fact that you have this incredible experience, especially over in a war zone in such a insane position that you were in, you have a lot of wisdom to share with other females just about that journey. And I can't wait to unpack that. But you were just on Jordan Peterson, episode launched yesterday. Jocko, Lex Friedman, trigonometry. You're a mental health advocate. You're a sports amazing, just incredible athlete, doing some sports that I wish I was cool enough to try. Motocross, rugby, taekwondo. I mean, I'm just impressed. So thank you for spending your time with me and talking with me a little bit about your journey today.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for accepting my lateness. It's so tardy and we'll never let it go. I really apologize, but LA is a trip to drive in. But yeah, I'm all of those things. I joined right as I turned 18. So I was done high school at 17, and then I joined in November. So I turned 18 in September. So it was just that tight time frame of still child mindset for sure. Yeah.
I know I watched that episode with Lex, and for those of you at home, if you haven't seen that episode, I'm going to hyperlink it for you. Please go watch that episode. It's really, I love his interview style, and I love how he unpacked a little bit of that journey for you. But I know you said in the episode with Lex that you weren't really necessarily drawn in any particular way to the military, it just kind of happened. But, after you made it into the office and you were like, okay, I'm going to join the military, what made you go straight artillery gunner?
Well, I wanted to do infantry, and it didn't really matter what the frontline job looked like. I was told I could do infantry, armored, or artillery, or combat engineer. And so I'm not a big fan of bombs, and I don't like the idea of being in a tin can. So it kind of left infantry or artillery, and then they asked infantry for me because they said, you're much too short and you're really, really tiny. So if we were to go and put you into the rotation, then you have to go do the infantry school as well. And people are rotating really fast to Afghanistan. They just said we don't want to have to basically retrade you to put you into another trade that you should have been in the first place. So I picked artillery. I like the idea of the support role, meaning you're on the front lines, but you're supporting the guys up front. I like being able to have others realize I have their back. It's that kind of, if I can't be out there doing the thing I want to do, then I'm going to go and at least be doing the thing to support those guys to do that. I've seen what artillery does up close, and it's this really cool, I'm going to reach out and touch you, and it felt really powerful. And so I went artillery, and it went really fast from there.
Wow. I had a completely opposite experience. When I first joined, I went to the office and I was like, I want to drive tanks. And they laughed at me. And, I was this really skinny 17-year-old girl. And they're like, there's on no planet that exists would you ever be able to go in combat arms. And so I went human resources when I first got in. And that is not what I stayed. But I was really upset. I felt definitely, I hate using this term, but it's so true at the time, the discriminated against. It's something that I really battled with during my first years in the military. Like anything I wanted to do that I was qualified to do that I could definitely do physically, I wasn't allowed to do just because I was a girl.
Right.
So I went human resources, which I don't regret. It was definitely a really good career path. And I actually was assigned with an engineer unit myself. And so I went overseas and went into combat zones, and I got to do some really cool things. I ended up becoming air assault and rappel master and doing some of those cool other things. But it wasn't until much later in my career. It was like the first 8 years I was banned from doing anything cool. So.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's wild too. You know, I talk a lot about women in the combat arms roles, and I think there's a place for it, but it is really different. It's just a different culture. It's the culture, you're in a man's world and you're expected to assimilate or get out. And that's okay. I don't have an issue with that. I don't, because I think when you lower standards, people get killed.
Yeah.
And I think women have a hard time with that conversation because they're like, well, you're a woman, you should be supporting women to do anything. And I'm not one of those people who believes that women can do all things. I don't think we necessarily need to be doing all things. Whether we can or need to be are two very different things, right? I think that we have the ability to be in places where we need to be that maybe are more strategic if a woman goes than a man. But I also understand biology and understand that men act differently around women. And if you're outside the wire and a woman gets hurt, men are going to react differently, which is going to make things go a little differently, which could have a negative end result. I do know a lot of women that were, like I have a good friend who was a female special operator. She was a warrant officer and she was really good at what she does, but she's built for that job. Her thighs are one thigh is two of my legs put together. She can outruck anybody I know. She's an absolute beast. And she's good in that way, but she'll even tell you men act differently around women there. And so it's definitely interesting to watch how the United States has started to adopt females into the ranks and kind of what that has looked like and whether it's been positive or negative. You have the same sort of happening in other militaries as well, women getting integrated. I think Israel does it really well. I think Israel does, the IDF do it really well because they have female units. And I think that some of those all-female units are more vicious than a lot of some male units. So I think there's a place for women for sure. It's just, it seems to be a bit of an issue the way that we're going about it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, to your very valid point, like around the world, I mean, especially since you were in Afghanistan, you probably had a very similar experience to me where you're on a base and it's NATO forces, right? So you're there with Germans, French, the British, you're there with all these different nations. I mean, when we went outside the wire, we would have like Polish, people with us, and it was men and women. And those women, to your very valid point, were like
different
awesome.
Women.
It was definitely of a different breed. Yeah. I mean, they were just really awesome, very well qualified and definitely knew what they were doing. And I think here in the United States, because it's been such a taboo thing for women to join the military, and I went through so much, like with, you should be in the kitchen. What are you doing here? Like every day I was told, to my face by a man that in some way, shape or form, I shouldn't have been there.
Right.
But one thing I wanted to touch on with you before we go down the rabbit hole of, women in armed forces around the world is that there's a lot of focus on like women not belonging in certain fields or spaces or whatever. But just one clear fact I always like to bring up: when I went to air assault school, 300 people show up on day 0, and by the end of day 0, maybe 150 remain. The bulk of those are male that wash out, right? The bulk of them. So even though males were already authorized to go to these courses just on the fact that they existed, right? And women are so often here in the US told, you can't go into this space because you're not going to be qualified. Well, I remained. I graduated that course. And so, the amount of males that failed out of that course far exceeded the amount of females. Right. Now, of course, there's the other side of the metrics there where like a fraction of those 300 were female that even went in the first place. Right. But I still met the qualifications. I exceeded the qualifications, actually. I passed all the tests, you name it. So I earned my right to be there. So I do appreciate you calling out like the, standards should not be lower. You should assimilate. You should be able to be in that environment, meet the standards, or you should not be there. So I do agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting response to see how that happens. So my show is 82% male listeners. So we get a lot of responses on that when we talk about it, because men can't say that. Men can't say that we shouldn't be lowering the standards, right? Because then they'll be seen as negatively being negative towards women in general, and then that just becomes a whole thing. Just like I can't say certain things about men because then it'll just look like I'm a whining female. And so it's like there's these things we can say we're not supposed to say, but I have no problem telling other women that it's just that's the truth. If you can't do the mission set because you can't do the push-ups, can't do the sit-ups, you can't do the run, you can't make like this, then you don't get to be there. There is no DEI allowed in the military, in my opinion. The fact that we do is disgusting, and it gets people killed, and it will, and it'll do that in any other sort of industry that we promote DEI over safety and rational behavior, especially when it comes to war, because our enemies, last time I checked, they don't really care what they're killing, they're just killing. So that's men and women, and it doesn't matter if there's 6.2 women and 2 black guys and 1 brown guy and a half Asian girl to meet the quotas. It's not acceptable. It shouldn't be there at all. It should be the best person to do the job, and if you're not the best person, then you wash out.
Yeah.
Try harder next time.
Yeah. Not even to mention like the recruiting standards, you know, to join the military. Again, I'm so excited to unpack Canada because I know nothing about the Canadian military services, but for the US, at least I was a recruiter for several years for the US military, and I think it's like 3% actually ends up even being eligible after you go through all the metrics like legal, education, right? You have to have a certain level of education. You have to pass the ASVAB. You have to do the physical assessment. You know, there's all these forms that you have to do and, you know, documents you have to have. So it's not easy to join the military. It's actually really, really, really hard. And, you know, to your point about DEI, like, I mean, there's only so far you're going to get. Like, do you want a body in the seat or do you want, you know, a specific attribute met? So,
well, it won't. And the thing is that we won't understand the full repercussions of those actions until we start deploying on a rapid basis again, and we see how negatively that impacts the outcomes of whether it's operations or situations or just deployments in general. You're going to see an issue, and it's going to happen. It's no different than the assault rates in the United States are like stupid level high. Right now, Canada's going through scandal after scandal after scandal. The major that treated me like garbage he's got 7 charges. He's not being charged or losing his pension or anything like that, right? So
for what kind of charges?
Sexual assault, 7 of them. So
wow.
This is like an ongoing thing we're seeing in a lot of different areas. And, you know, a lot of individuals kind of bring up the idea, well, it's like, okay, if there's so many assaults, then, you know, women for sure shouldn't be in the space. And like, I get that, don't get me wrong, but I'm also like, okay, where's the accountability on the guy to be like, I'm not going to rape you. I don't feel like that's a hard thing to request of somebody. And I don't care if you've been gone for a year or not. But then we also see it with men, right? So that's like, okay, if the argument is then if you can't have women there because women are getting assaulted because the men can't stop assaulting the women, then where's the hard conversation about the men assaulting the men? And then the men not being able to report it, right? Because I can count on both hands a ton of men who have been assaulted by other people in their units that are other men, but they can't talk about it. They can't say anything about it. So just because we also have being like women assaulted, it's not going to stop the women from being assaulted. Like the assault problem is not going to stop. Right. Meaning if you remove the women, it's still happening to men.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter if you remove the women. It's just we have a problem. We have an accountability to leadership. We have a problem where people aren't being held accountable for when they do something negative. Like they're not losing pensions. They're not being dishonorably discharged. They're not, you know, they're not having the repercussions of what somebody who assaulted another human being should have. Because the military's retention rates are garbage. The military doesn't have the amount of people it needs right now, especially the way that you guys are deploying people left, right, and center and about to pop off in Taiwan. So you guys are spread so thin everywhere. Like everywhere. You still got people in Iraq. You still got people in Syria. You still got people in Ukraine. You still got people in Russia clapping other dudes that aren't supposed to be in Russia. Then you've got people over in Israel. Then you've got people that are not anywhere near the Middle East or doing anything at all. So it's like, how many more people do you have? Because then what happens if Taiwan pops? Well, you guys have already committed to people over there. So then now you're spreading thin out of there. So it's like, your retention rates are garbage. People are assaulting people left, right, and center. DEI is destroying the militaries. You've got tampons in the men's bathrooms. And then you guys are fighting every single war on every single front. So, you know, it makes sense to me that they will cover up so that they keep people in the service because they don't have enough people to keep in the service. So it's like, oh, it's just an assault. Shh.
I talked with Michael Sartain not too long ago about this exact topic, you know, just about men and sexual assault and, you know, how that even breeds in the first place within the military. And I shared with him, you know, when I was I was much younger, I think I was like 20 or something. I was on a flight coming home on a 2-week leave. And it was very clear that I was like, I think I was a PFC or a Private First Class or a specialist at the time. So it was low ranking. It was clear I was young. And there was this like super predatory, I think he was like a like a full bird colonel or something on my flight, and of the Marine Corps as well. And he like stood outside the bathroom on the plane, like waiting for me to come out, and was like trying to convince me to go back in the toilet, you know, on the plane, and like, you know, wanted to like meet up after. It was really, really uncomfortable and awkward. And here's the thing, like it is top down. Like you've got the most senior leaders in the military that are also being predatory. And, you know, when things cross their desks about there was a sexual assault in this unit, they're punishing the leaders of that unit. So then they don't want to report them. It's like a never ending vicious cycle. Yeah. And it is truly top down. But the other thing that we talked about on that episode is that the military doesn't breed, and here in the U.S., doesn't breed a environment that encourages one of the basic hierarchical needs of a human, and that's in men, you know, sexual contact, relationship, right? They need that to be whole as a person, and so they put them in these like really remote destinations. I think we were talking about one that I think it's a base in New Mexico. I forget the name of it, but they have a really high suicide rate there, and they ban the guys leaving the base. They don't let them go out, and the girls, of course, but they don't let them leave the base. They don't let them have relationships off the base. So then they're kind of like pent up. They're sexually frustrated. You know, they're in trouble all the time. They're getting yelled at. They're in stressful working conditions. And then at some point, those people are going to get to a point where they're just like ready to rape somebody, you know, where they're upset. They have all the markings and all of the makings of just like predatory behavior. So,
well, if we're creating predatory behavior and we know that we're doing it, then that should be chargeable offense to have people held in that position in the first place. I mean, whether you're having individuals not being able to communicate with other people, you're not letting people out. Like these are behaviors that we do to people in prisons where we separate you as a form of punishment, where we don't allow these things. So then you have to look at, okay, who's doing it? Why are they doing it? What is the reasonings for it? Is there some national security reasons that these people are being held in a specific type of way for a specific type of reason? And then you need to address that. Like that isn't, the problem there isn't that people are raping people. The problem is that the people are putting the people in the position to even have these situations pop up, meaning like they're not equipping the individuals below them with the right tools, the right way to handle it. Like if you're going to put somebody in a situation where you're never going to leave the base, you're never going to be able to do anything, you're never going to be able to like have sex, let off steam, be a human being.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not going to let people do that, then you damn well better be ready to handle the consequences, because we know we are biological human beings going through a human experience. That means we need certain things. Right. We need food, we need sunlight, we need touch, we need 8 to 10 hugs a day. Like these are actual physical needs that the body needs to thrive or even just stay in an acceptable level of life.
I can see every single hoorah soldier turning over in their grave right now. I don't need 8 to 10 hugs a day.
Yes, you do, bitches. Shut up. Yes, you do. You do. Yes, you do.
Man.
Yeah. But that's the okay, so there's your problem right there. Yeah. Let me tell you why. Because you got people in America, this is really interesting, because you guys have this massive Bible Belt, and then below it is just like no feelings, no emotions, boys don't cry, don't allow it, don't talk about it, blah, blah, blah. We have a higher suicide rate than we've ever seen in men. You want to know why? Because we've taught people that they don't need to feel their feelings, and if they do, they should be ashamed and they should feel disappointed in themselves because they're men. Right? Yeah. So we've bred a culture in society over the past 20, 30 years where we've said we've gone through war after war after war. We've had the worst economic states happen in the United States. We have people losing their homes and their businesses through COVID. And then we're like, oh, men, don't cry because you're weak if you do. What are we doing? Do you not realize that you're going to break a human being? It's not that difficult to do.
Yeah.
And so we all say we have problems with it while all perpetuating the same behaviors, while not all of us are doing anything to do anything about it. So part of the problem is there's got to be an accountability on some level. We have to say to each other, why aren't you calling me? Why aren't you involving me in your life? We as individuals have to make the extra steps to show up for the community that apparently nobody seems to have anymore. And that connection that is missing from society, and is why the suicides are the way they are and climbing. So we can sit there and we can say it's like, you know, it's the way the world is now, and you know, it's just that's just how my parents raised me. Well, I'm sorry, maybe your parents didn't raise you well enough then. Maybe all that means is that they didn't have the emotional intelligence and capacity to teach you that it's okay to feel what you need to feel, that you actually do need those 8 to 10 hugs, that you do actually need to be outside barefoot, that you do actually need to be in others and their surroundings often, because it's how you biomimic and how your body flows. And if you don't, you die early. And we know that on average, if you don't have grandchildren around grandparents, I think it's like 4 to 6 years they'll die earlier.
Wow.
Right? So that's why you have places like in Japan, you have these blue zones, right? Community is the number one most important part of outside of healthy food, good sleep, and clean water. If you do not have community, people die early. We've seen that. But if you have thriving communities, people live way past life expectancy is supposed to, especially for people that are, 80 to 100 now.
I just remember the name of the base. It was Clovis, New Mexico. And they have like a really, really high suicide rate there. And I was talking to an airman there. He's early 20s. I think he's only like 3rd or 4th year in. I had already heard from chatting with Michael about his experience, because he had also been at Clovis for a while, about how like secluded the base is. It's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around it. There's no community, to your point about building a community. So these guys are stationed there for years. And a lot of the commanders here in the US will shut down them being allowed to leave at certain hours or times or whatever, or reduce them to only being allowed to leave, the base for an hour here, an hour there, or whatever, because they're worried about like drinking and driving and like, not having, because they get in trouble if there's any issues with their units.
No,
if anybody, they it's like this vicious cycle of just like restricting movement, and it just like breeds like this horrible experience for men and women, where they just don't have the community, they don't have freedom. They're just it feels very prison-like, and the U.S. has not evolved or developed. They're still using like World War II training tactics. They're still treating people like they're in World War II, even though as a world population, we've come so far beyond, like even in our fighting tactics, we don't fight that way anymore. And they're still treating people like they have to be in the military versus like it's a privilege to have those service members there. And so they're, even the way that they interact, like the leaders interact with the youth, it's like they're getting yelled at, they're getting treated disrespectfully. You can still train, in my opinion, you can still train and you can still become like the most vicious fighting force in the world without somebody treating you like shit all the time. And I think a lot of those service members are just, they have a retention crisis right now. They have a recruiting crisis right now. Recruiters are not hitting their numbers across the U.S. For having service members join or re-enlist or whatever, because the military is not a great place to be right now. So, in terms of your comment about community is so critical. And unfortunately, it's not there.
Well, it's not only not there, it's not there when you transition out either, too, right? So that's one of the biggest problems is you lose that identity, you lose that community, and you have a lack of purpose. And that is one of the contributing factors to the suicide epidemic. But further to your point, when you have bases like this and you have places like this, and if you're going to continue to treat people like this, then you need to expect this. And that's an easy argument for them to say is, well, we don't want people because we don't want them to drink and drive. Okay, well, what about all the other bases and all of the other places in America? What about the entire Coronado Island? Like, isn't that an entire thing like Navy SEALs and pilots? So do they not get to leave because they're like, what words are you saying? That's an irrational excuse to not let people out. Feels like there's more to that, but it just feels like that's like a place people would be sent to be punished. It doesn't feel like it's a place to be sent to be trained.
Well, I would say Southern California has it pretty good. The bases down in Southern California, they're surrounded by, if they're at Miramar as an example, they've got, San Diego right there. That's a great place to be. It's a great place to be stationed. So there's definitely places, I don't want to be too general. There's definitely places to be in the military, like Hawaii as an example.
Good spots.
Where it's great, right? You have a great quality of life. There's a lot of vibrant nightlife. There's women, for the men and, men for the girls. So, I mean, there's a lot of options, but then there's also these bases where you have these high suicide rates that are totally out in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota, Fargo. I mean, like there's all these like outlandish places that, just there's nothing going on. And I think those are the places that you end up seeing like the higher mortality rates.
I can understand why. It makes sense. I wouldn't want to live there either.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to unpack Canada a little bit, the armed services. So you joined at 17. What was basic training like for you?
So I went to basic training in, I think it was January 08. It was fine. Not too difficult. I'm coming from like being very fit walking into it. It was more, the only thing that was more uncomfortable was like learning weapons because I'd never shot guns before and I wasn't really exposed to them. And so once you got over the fact that they just yell at you and that you just don't sleep, it's not that bad.
And you were always an athlete, right? So from high school, you were an athlete?
Yeah. No, since I was 4.
Oh, since you were 4. Okay, yeah. Wow. So yeah, you definitely had an easier time then. You were ready to go.
I had no problem at all.
How long is your basic training?
12 12, 13 weeks, I think. 12 weeks.
Do they do it co-ed there?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where were you stationed for that?
So that's in Saint Jean, Quebec.
Got it.
So that's in Quebec. It's called the Mega. It's a big concrete building kind of thing, and it's everyone together, and then officers have their own courses and things like that, and they're a little bit longer. And so yeah, you go. It's co-ed, and it's not trade specific or anything like that. So you got everyone going into all different types of trades, all different types of places, and then the women, we had our own pods. So where we were in the Mega, it was pods, meaning so it'd be like the main hallway, and then a pod would shoot off, and in that pod would be like three or four beds, and you each had your own room, but that was just like your little pod. So the women were all in one, and then the men were in theirs. So there was no co-ed in that sense, but there was co-ed just in the fact that we were in the same
training
group.
together.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
cool. And in terms of like the things that you would learn, it's just I'm just so curious how different it is from the US. So you did weapons training. Did you guys do like CS gas?
Oh yeah. We do all the same stuff. Yeah, gas. We have to all the basics that it means to be a soldier at all. The only difference is our weapons just have slightly different names. So you guys have M16s, we have C7s. Like just little things like that, but they're the same sort of 5.56 or 7.62 round. They're nothing crazy. So we learn all the same stuff. We do the gas, we do the sleep deprivation, we do the Farnham, which is like you go out in the field for your week and you do operations, like we do all of that stuff. And then once we're done basic, we go to SQ and DP1. So weapons handling, which is, every weapon. So the grenades, the rocket launchers, the M72s, all the different weapon sets, you learn them there, and the different machine guns. And then after that, you go to your trade specific training. So that weapon set is 4 weeks.
And you knew you were going to be a gunner at that point? Okay, cool.
No, I knew I was going to be a gunner when I signed up.
Yeah.
My MOS was done before I even signed on the dotted line.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you went to gunnery school, was there a bunch of other girls there?
Yeah, there was I think there was like 3 or 4 of us.
That's not very many. How large was your class?
Oh, it was big, but that was normal for us though, right? So like we always saw women around. It just was, there was like a couple here and like a handful over here. Like in the engineering, the combat engineers where they were above us, they had I think one female.
Wow.
Yeah.
I went to a course after air assault. I went to a rappel master.
Okay.
And the instructors there had never seen a girl even show up to the course. And so when I went there, I was completely by myself. And I was in a barracks on my own. Because you know how in the evening in courses, like you can go and study at night to like pass your tests and stuff?
No, I didn't do those types of courses.
You didn't do that? Oh, okay. So
I went right to war. I didn't get courses.
How you were young when you went, right? Like 18, 19 or something when you went?
Yeah, I was 19.
Got it. So when I went through my schools, they have like these evenings where you can go and like study together, but it's much harder if you're not in the same barracks because you can only go a certain distance, right? There's certain hours you can study. So I didn't have a study buddy. I didn't get to study with anybody. I was completely alone by myself. So that sucked. But that's really cool that you went through with some girls. So you went through basic training, and then right after basic training, this is like the height of the Afghan war OEF.
Yeah.
You were there 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, you went a year before me. I went 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So you literally went basic training, your qualification
DP1
school,
and deployment,
and straight to deployment. How long were you overseas?
6 months.
Wow. Okay. And you said you were Kandahar and some other places in there.
So we fly into Kandahar. So I didn't work at I didn't stay at Kandahar. So we flew into Kandahar. We were there for 3 days, and then we got picked up and went to our FOB. So we went to FOB Ramrod in the Maywan district, but it was an American FOB. So it was this really tiny, like 3 mile kind of deal, like 3 mile, 3 kilometers. I'm not sure. It was very small. FOB, it had a couple towers on it. And then it was the there was American infantry there, and then 2 Canadian guns. So we were shooting for them because they didn't have enough 777s. And then the other Canadians that deployed with us, they went to Canadian FOBs out to like Massamgard, and I don't remember what the other Canadian was at the time. And then the officers and stuff, depending on who they were, if they weren't on the guns, they stayed at CAF or they were at one of those other FOBs. And then our guys, it was Battery R, Troop Alpha, we went out to theirs. But it was interesting because we were French. So we had to run our guns in French and then do all the radio commands in English for all the people from Texas and stuff like that. Like it was a interesting dynamic because where we came from in Vacarche is like, it's north of Quebec City, which means it's like no English is like a no, like no, except for the officers because you have to be bilingual. So some of our guys didn't even speak English.
Wow. I didn't know that about the requirement for the officers that you have to be bilingual.
It's our second language.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you have to have it.
Wow. Okay. That makes me want to like study French more. I did a little bit of French. Do you speak French?
Not anymore. Where I live, it's Mandarin, Cantonese, Farsi, Pashto, Arabic, everything else but French.
Wow. And speaking of Pashto and in Arabic. Did you do any of the training? No, we had a translator. We used to have a card that we would like fold up in our vest to, do stop and put your hands up. Like the,
like yellow and all that. Like I just learned that from watching people yell it. I mean, it was weird because I was already dealing enough with I barely spoke French. So I was already dealing enough with my unit, let alone have to try to figure out another language. And then I got picked up and went with a different country anyway. So by that point, I was in so quick. Me and a couple guys that got deployed from our basic training group that followed all the way through. We got deployed so quick that most of us we didn't even know what we were doing there.
Wow.
We didn't get a mission set and a conversation where we're shooting. We'll go to this fob. Then we shoot.
And you guys are just running convoys, you just going between. No, where were you guys?
No,
doing?
We stayed on fob.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so the guns had to stay on the fob. You don't move those guns. The barrel's $1 million a piece. We don't move those guns unless they need to be moved. And even then, we try to lift them with Chinooks and take them out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wild. I definitely I'm so thankful for my time overseas because it really taught me a lot about how the rest of the world lives, because when you grow up, I grew up in the UK and then America split time between both countries. And so, I had a pretty, easy upbringing. And so going over to Afghanistan and just seeing just war-torn country, and I was over in Toronto, Pakistan, eastern side of the country, Pakistan border, close to 2 hours south of Kabul, and it was just nothing there, just desert terrain, and I equate it to walking on the moon, just
weird,
the dust just floats up in the air as you're walking. It's so dry. We were laughing about the burn pits as we were starting to roll because I'm losing my hair a little bit, but
she's like, it might be the bleach. I said it might be the burn pits.
Maybe it might be the burn pits. I'm coming for you.
Both now at this.
U.S.
point.
Government, give me my check. But yeah, I definitely had a really interesting time on the base, off the base. But I'm again thankful for the time, but at the same time, it was such a horrible experience for me being there. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I had a interesting deployment. Like I said, I was busy because I was a female. It was an interesting deployment. I got picked up by the British, so I went with the Canadians, shot for the Americans, then got picked up by the Black Watch and the 3rd Scot Battalion from Scotland, and then I went on operation with them. So I did female searching from that point on with them. It was Aura, I think it's Tora, Aura. It's the Brits have these interesting names for things. Anyway, so I was with them in June, and we did on-foot operations with them. So that was a trip, and then we had a lot of death and just violence and what it normally is, what you would think it to be. 2009, the summer was, we lost a lot of Canadians, a lot of Brits. Helmand Province got rocked. Americans got hit a lot. So it was there was a lot. It was just a lot going on. It was a really intense time. And I got really messed up on that operation, and that led to me being medically released from that operation specifically. So after that, after that operation, I went back to the guns for a little bit. Then I was in and out of with the medics, and then after that, they sent me home 3 weeks early from that deployment. So I went back to the hospital pretty quick. And then after that, I never saw my unit again. So it was this weird turnaround time, this strange 6-month dystopian weird block of my life. It's hard to talk about because it's not painful that way anymore. But I mean, it's just strange when I look back. Do you ever look back at any of your life and go, when did really? That was part of my life. I did that. I just feel like I'm so far past what that life was for me now. I've been doing a decade and a half of work to fix the damage that was done on that deployment, that now when I look back at it, sometimes I don't recognize that human being at all. I mean, I was 19. I was a child at best, and so I can understand why everything went the way it did, how it all went the way it did, because I was so young and I was so naive and I was so just gung-ho to go do the job, right? And so I put myself in situations that were I was put in situations I wasn't trained to be in, period.
I mean, frankly, any teenager, right? I mean, you were 19. Yeah. I think I was 19 or 20, maybe 20 when I went and deployed, maybe 21. And I mean, most of the people I was with were young. You
Yeah.
know, when I was a recruiter, most of the people I was enlisting were fresh out of high school.
Exactly.
You know, and so they're not qualified for that type of stuff. Which, you know, I get asked a lot by parents these days that know that, you know, I used to be a recruiter, used to be in the military. Would you send? I have a 15-year-old son, so they say, you know, would you send your own son to the military? Would you recommend my child goes? And it's such a complex conversation for me, especially with where we're at in the world today, with what's going on. One of the things I haven't asked you about yet, but I mean, what better time than now to talk about is the pullout of Afghanistan. It's what made me get out of the military. So I got out of the military in 2022. And what made me get out was our withdrawal. I was actually in the middle of going through officer infantry training to take over, you know, and help facilitate for the integration of women into the armed ranks. Sorry, not the armed ranks, the combat armed ranks. And that was one of the requirements that the U.S. military put in place is there has to be a female officer, then there has to be an E6 within the ranks to help facilitate women slowly integrating. And when I was going through that training, you know, the pullout was happening simultaneously. I was like, this is crazy. I spent so much of my life over in that country, and to see our translators getting killed, to see our own people getting killed during the pullout, and basically everything we spent decades building, the amount of people that lost their lives in the tens of thousands to be there and implement structure and to open orphanages and put women in schools and things like that. All of that work was done literally undone overnight. And so with the way the political landscape is today, I tell people I wouldn't put my teenager. I would not want other people to put their teenagers in. I think, you know, it's for me, just in my personal experience and what I went through, where I felt at the end of the day, what really made me get out was like, we really are just pawns. You know, within the military. And we're really just, depending on who's at the helm of, you know, that political year, that election cycle, you know, we're just kind of these toys that they just move around like chess pieces. And I know you talk a lot about this, about feeling like the Canadian government has failed service members. I agree on the US side that once you leave the military, and even while you're in the military, to be frank with you, you are truly on your own and you're just a pawn, you're just a body. And even though they have these campaigns where they talk about how much they care and how much they're going to take care of you, and you know, all these people that try to champion around veterans initiatives, like you're really, at the end of the day, you go to bed alone and you still got to deal with all of those demons on your own. So I wouldn't put my 15-year-old in the military, you know, when he turns 17, 18, if I had a choice.
Right.
I'm sure.
As if you have a choice.
Right. I'm sure that because I'm saying this now out loud and putting that into the universe, he's going to be like, so mom, I'm joining the military.
And you're going to have to support him.
I am going to have to support him. And I would, of course I would. But yeah, no, it's definitely something I wrestle with a lot, you know, in terms of being supportive of other teenagers going in. Because I just look back at 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old Amy, and I went through hell. So yeah. So I want to unpack that a little bit with you, because you have talked so much about, you know, feeling like you've definitely not been taken care of, or other service members haven't been taken care of over in Canada. So what's going on that front?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just veterans. Canada's failing every citizen that lives in that country right now in like historic fashion. You know, so in terms of veterans, for sure, yeah, we have never looked after veterans. We've done everything we possibly can to not look after veterans. And not only that, is we put so many roadblocks in place. We make sure that they are turned down. On average, it's like 2 to 3 times you'll get turned down for something. And then you have to bring in like the bureau, like the pensions advocates, and you need to bring in other people and other lawyers to get what you're rightfully owed for the damage that they've done to you by making you and allowing you to be the pawn and putting you in the positions you're in. And so, you know, part of the thing is your VA is similar down here. I mean, if you know how to work the VA system down here, you're all right. Most, though, aren't shown how to do it. They don't know how to do the paperwork, and they're not really sure where to go next. So they rely on a lot of your charities. You guys have 46,000 active charities in America for veterans, and somehow you still have like the highest suicide rates, right? So what does that tell me? It tells me that there's not communication, and that everybody wants to be at the top and not actually solve a problem, right? So if we were to remove, you know, whether it's the people in power's ability to fund or support the military. I'm not saying like the active military, but the veterans. So like if we had a separation of like church and state, where it's like once you're out, the VA is not attached at all to the government or at all to any sort of insurance company. Like in Canada, Manulife manages most, now they got the contract for Veterans Affairs. So an insurance company whose job is to not pay you ever, you know what insurance companies are like, is now being responsible for veterans care and whether or not they get what they need.
Wow.
Like Manulife had a PI follow me around for 7 days because I didn't want to go to one of their doctors and I wanted to use the same psychiatrist I'd been using since 2011 because he's the guy to do the very first research on post-Rwanda and Bosnia veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder. So he knows his shit. So I'd like to stick with him. But they wanted me to go to this other person, so I refused to. So they sent a PI to follow me around for 7 days.
Wow.
So when you have people like that are doing everything they can to make sure that veterans don't reach out for help, number one, or don't have access once they do, it's a really frustrating process because we deserve better. You ask us to go do these things. We say, yes, we're going to go do them. And then when you come back, you abandon them. And it's a really tragic thing to watch because the majority of people just want to feel better.
Yeah.
It's not like they want a lot. They just don't want to feel like dying every day.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a perfectly normal and acceptable thing to be asking of another human being is, hey, I don't feel good. I need help. Will you please help me? And when the answer is often no, or how about MAID, then we're having a different conversation. And that's what Canada's doing, right? So, you know, our government has been caught red-handed offering veterans who are asking for a wheelchair ramp or help with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury with medical assistance and dying and telling them it's better than blowing their brains out on the wall, right? So we have our government actively persuading individuals who are vulnerable in a mental health state that it's better for them to die than it is to get treatment. And almost all of my treatment outside of my psychiatrist has been done for my injuries in America. And that's because Canada doesn't recognize my traumatic brain injury. They said it's not service related, although I stood beside a 155 millimeter howitzer for my career and had the thing explode. And we know about concussive blasts and we understand what that looks like. We understand PSIs. We understand concussive blasts off a 7.62 round. We understand it from mortars. We understand. But they're going to do everything they can to say it's not our fault. It's not our problem. But they don't give you the right equipment. They don't give you the right stuff. People have to buy their own things. And then they have a problem with it when you report it when you get out. So Canada does all the same song and dance as America. Same with the UK. The UK don't have a VA. Like these guys are just as bad. You know, Australia is no different. Any of the NATO forces, which is really ironic to me because we fight all the wars, yet we have the least amount of support for veterans. So it's a really...
Well, all the money's going to the war. You know what I mean? They don't even think about like part two of that. Like what happens after?
Okay, so let's take that for example. So I had Tulsi Gabbard on my show recently, and her and I were having this conversation about when Syria popped off, okay? When she was read in, and she goes, look, I was read in, I went into the room, and I asked the question, we're going to hit them, then what? And the response literally was, they're not going to do anything about it. We don't think there's going to be a response. But she goes, okay, but if there is... what is our response? And they're like, no, we're going to decimate them. They won't hit us. And she's okay, but what is the response? We don't have these plans. We're not thinking long term. We're only thinking in the immediate future of the next, because you guys think in America, the rest of the world follows suit, right? You guys think in 4-year cycles or 2, depending on how you want to look at your political system. Canada doesn't think that way, right? We have different politics. We have different, I mean, our prime minister's been in forever. He's a disaster. He's just a sad example of what a leader is supposed to be. He is just really, I don't know if I can come up with I wish I had a brain like Jordan right now, because there's probably like 7 different words I could use to describe this just useless example of a human being. And you have people like this who come in and they dictate what happens to the service members. And due to their terrible decision making and selling out to people like the CCP, we don't have the money. So then we start killing our citizens with MAID so we can get the money, and then we turn around and we give it to Ukraine, which is ridiculous. So it's this really frustrating thing to witness when you've got service members that literally, if you just gave them the right support when they were overseas or when they got home, you could have kept them in the service and the retention rate would have been there. And you think about the amount of money that it takes to actually make a soldier. Think about that. That's a huge investment. Why wouldn't you want to save on your investment? But during the war or the height of Afghanistan, at least for us, we didn't know how to handle post-traumatic stress disorder. So we just threw medication at it. And then we just booted people out because they're broken. We can't fix them.
Yeah. And it was like a big thing at the time too, where if you even dared to say, hey, I'm feeling kind of down, I'm feeling kind of depressed, you get pulled right off the line. You get
that's why
kicked out of the military, you get exiled, then there's no support for you, right? It's just this vicious cycle. And even now, I mean, so when I was over in Afghanistan, I had so much horrible stuff going on within my own unit. My immediate enemy was people in my unit. I've talked about this before. But I had a physician's assistant assigned to our unit. There's no hospitals on base. There's like very shitty medical care on base. And the one person on the base that I should have been able to feel the safest around, which was our PA, was one that was actually like harassing me constantly, kicking my office door, threatening behavior, you name it. And I reported this formally, but when you can't even feel safe in that environment, I went down this rabbit hole of just like depression and anxiety. Like, I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't report it because he was an officer. There's all this unwanted attention that comes along with reporting, right? So it's like this vicious cycle. So I went on medication while I was over in Afghanistan. Of course, they're handing out Ambien like it's candy.
Oh, candy.
So then you get addicted to Ambien, and it really affected my performance. It really affected my mental health. I mean, I was completely on the wrong dose of the medicine they gave me at the time. And I was like, literally, this is not an exaggeration. I was actually drooling one day, sitting at my computer trying to process something. And I had a chief warrant officer that was in the room with me, and she looked over at me and she's like, are you okay? And I was literally drooling, and I didn't even notice because I was just so conked. So this is like just bad practice of care, across the board. I mean, I just, here in the US, there's these like predatory services that will pop up to try to help facilitate you through the VA process, but they charge like $20,000 to do it. It's a bad system. The whole thing is just, it's a mess.
Well, where you get anybody who gets any sort of disability, you're going to have predatory behavior.
Yeah.
Right. So that's pretty standard from like just a human perspective. You're always going to have those people.
And the VA's got like here in the US, wait lists that go for like 4 to 6 months, sometimes a year to get seen. I had somebody from the VA call and say, hey, I was going through like a no joke burn pit review. And they were like, hey, next year, we have an appointment slot like a whole year away. Would you like to book it? And I was like, well, I guess put me on the list. But that's a joke, right? That's a joke.
No.
That you have to wait a whole year.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Canada healthcare is like. It's 18 months to see a specialist. That's just normal healthcare in Canada, right? So to see a military doctor it's even more ridiculous. It's just not possible. And to get a psychiatrist or psychologist, like you're begging and pleading. Like we just got somebody into a friend of my psychiatrist who's also a doctor, but that person didn't get in because they went through the system. They were turned down by the system multiple times. They were at an event, who knew a friend who knew me, who then contacted me and asked, can I give your contact information, see if you can help? Because that's where we're at. We have to rely on each other now. We have to rely on the veterans within the system to be able to like, hey, I got you. And we're going to run you through our protocols and our systems. Like that's what I did with psychedelics, right? Like when I was in Afghanistan, I was on 11 drugs. I was 100 pounds on 11 drugs.
Wow.
So there's no way I'm functioning properly at all at that point. And then I was on that for my entirety of my 20s. Right. So I don't remember.
Are these things that they prescribe to you?
Oh, yeah. Like antidepressants, uppers, downers, sleep meds, you name it. All of it to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder. Right. So they did that to me within the country while still running machine guns, while still pulling lanyards. That's not okay. And the fact that we don't want to address that, like, well, we're just medicating the problem at the time. Well, that's not the way to deal with the problem.
What is pulling lanyards?
That's what you grab on the side of the artillery gun.
Oh God, I'm like
lanyard.
For all of us laymen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, it's okay.
Don't understand.
No, it's okay. It's that's on me. That's my own problem there. Sorry about that. But
you're good.
But yeah, so it's an interesting thing. But I think there's a lot of hope, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been fighting for veterans' mental health care since 2015, and that's when I started what my brand is. And the reason I started it is because there are organizations that are filling the gaps for the VA. Now, there shouldn't be gaps for anybody to fill in the VA, but here we are. So let's, instead of bitching about it, let's fix the problem. So you've got organizations in America that are top notch. There's bad apples and everything, but there are some like banger organizations here. Yeah. And so I've been treated by them. They've funded me before. They've gone outside the lines of, what their purview is to help me out. And they've been incredible. So I think that there is a lot of hope because you do have a lot of veterans from post, like the GWAT war there. You've got those people going, okay, the VA is not helping.
GWAT, by the way, for you guys listening, is Global War on Terrorism.
My apologies again.
Okay, I'll help break down acronyms where I can.
Yay!
The Canadian ones, I don't know if I'm going to be too good at, but we'll get there.
So we've got people who are like, excuse me, okay, well, we know the government's not going to help. We know the VA is not going to help. And then you've got these people like the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, and all these other dudes who have these massive connections, who start building organizations. Then you just have the everyday people who's lost somebody, who's lost a family member, lost a child, and they're like, I need to do something. So they start these 501(c)(3)s, which are these organizations.
Nonprofits.
Yeah. So that's what's really amazing is people aren't relying anymore. And that if you need help, there is a lot of different places you can go to. Like the ones I work with more American organizations than I work with Canadian. I only work with 2 in Canada, and I work with a bunch in America. And the ones in Canada are Honor House, and Honor House is my like. I work with Honor House, and then you've got other ones like True Patriot Love up there. But then in America, you've got like Defenders of Freedom for TBIs. You've got Boot Campaign for TBIs. You've got Heroic Hearts Project for psychedelics. You've got who else do I work with right now that's like been really amazing? You got Semper Stronger, which is doing a lot of different stuff that in conjunction they do stuff with TBIs for the fitness side of things and nutrition side of things. So you've got amazing organizations here that people can reach out to. You don't have to feel like you can't get better anymore. There isn't an excuse now. You've got Google. And if you're in any sort of touch with veterans, somebody is out there that will help you. You just have to ask for it. That's really been our problem, right? Is we've been telling people that if you ask for help, you're weak, you're less than, you can't, you shouldn't. I don't believe there's a stigma the way we say there is anymore. I think that there's a fear. What if I tell somebody I'm not feeling well? What will that mean? Well, do I have a jaded ex-wife that's going to use that against me with my children? Do I have guns in the house? Is somebody going to say I'm not safe? Are they going to take my guns away? Like, you need to actually think about the real repercussions, like, because there's more for a lot of people, right? There's more divorces in the military than anywhere else. So think about that. If you say to your spouse, I'm not feeling that good, or I have to go see this doctor, or I'm on this medication, what if things aren't going well at home? What if she uses that or he uses that against you in court and now you don't get to see your children, right? So I understand. But what people need to understand is that you're not going to start healing or getting better until you take that step. And that's going to be the hardest step of all. But once you do, then you're on the path to getting better.
Well, that's the whole purpose of my show, by the way. I don't know if you saw this. I mean, a lot of the episodes that have where I talk about this, I actually haven't released. But the reason why my show is called The Amy Is Show is because I had such a horrible time in the military. And there was a lot of good that came from it, too. So I want to give that a recognition. But I had a lot of trauma come from the military. And the reason why I call it The Amy Is Show is because for a long time, that blank of Amy Is has been filled in with so many things of negative self-talk. And, I told you when I was over in Afghanistan, my closest enemies were my brothers and sisters in arms. And, I had a really, really tough time where, Amy is a barracks bunny. Amy is a whore. Amy is, not belonging in the military. Amy should be in the kitchen, right? Like all of these things that are just so horrible. I have also had, a lot of negative self-talk of like, I have issues with PTSD and depression and anxiety and things like that. And so my own negative self-talk, I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, right? I shouldn't be doing this, like all of these negative things. And so the reason for my show is I really wanted to help veterans reach access and resources that they would help them. So it's called Amy Is, so I can now fill in the blank with what my actual story is. So Amy is awesome, Amy is capable, Amy is worthy, right? Like all of these things to help not only myself, but other people realize that they get to fill in their blank too. So specifically, I hand select people to bring on the show. I prefer that they have a military background because my audience that I'm trying to reach is military veterans. When they leave the military, I want them to have a community and a safe landing net because it is hard. The transition going from that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that regiment of I know what I'm wearing tomorrow. I know what time I'm supposed to be there. I know where my next meal is coming from. I know what my mission is. When all of that's taken away and you're on your own, you're going into a completely different environment where you're not sure what you're going to wear. Where's your next paycheck coming from? Where's your next meal coming from? What is your purpose in life anymore, right? Like people don't often have the answers to those questions when they leave the service and they fail and they get into these depressive loops and, they struggle with suicide thoughts, or actions, and they they don't have the community around them that we've talked about. So that's what the show is for, is to bring some of those clarity, bring clarity to some of those questions that they have. So I'll definitely grab some preferred links from you for like organizations that can help people.
Yeah, I've got a lot.
That's the whole point. Like, I mean, literally recently I've had, moments where I've gone down these dark, deep rabbit holes where I feel isolated. And even me, with all this access to information, resources, people, community that I've started to build for others, like even in those moments, I find myself where I'm just like isolating and, who do I talk to? Who do I reach out to? So, as the expert in, mindset and, having the coaching services that you have, what would you say to somebody who's in this moment where they're struggling, and what was the first thing they should do?
Well, honestly, when hearing you talk, you remind me of me like 10 years ago. You're so fresh out. You're so fresh out. You're so fresh out. This community is really interesting. It can be really, really positive, or it could be really, really negative. Here's the thing that I want to remind you is you're trying to do something in this space that a lot of people don't want to see you do.
Yeah.
That's going to come with a particular type of feeling, right? Nobody hates a successful veteran more than another veteran. Okay. So you're going to get it still. So don't think that that's going to go away. That only comes from weak-minded men and weak-minded women. So that still exists in this space. Don't get me wrong. When you transition out, it still exists. You're just going to see it differently.
Yeah.
But when you see it, the response doesn't need to be, I'm Amy with PTS or any of this. And that's another one I'd encourage you right off the bat. Stop saying your labels. You're not any of those. And you're not PTSD because it's not a disorder. It's an injury. It's healable. It's fixable. If it was a disorder, it's something you got to deal with your whole life. It's an injury. It's something you can fix. So you are the stories you tell yourself right off the bat.
Powerful.
That's just it. That's just the truth. Every cell in your body is eavesdropping on your thoughts. That's what the subconscious is, okay? So it took me a decade to realize I'm not the labels I was told I was. A decade. And I was only in 4 years. So think about the wiring that your brain has.
Yeah, 16 years of negative negative self-talk for sure.
So give yourself some grace.
Yeah, thank you.
Because you're newly out.
Yeah.
And you're landing into a space where you're putting yourself out there immediately. So you're exposing yourself in a completely different way. I didn't start exposing myself. So I'm like, I got out in 11. That didn't really start publicly till 16. So I had all of the suicidal rage and darkness and heaviness of not leaving bed and not being able to function, but no one really saw it.
Yeah.
Okay. So just give yourself some grace on that. But people need to realize that there is no time limit to healing. And they think that there is. Most people think, okay, but it's been 10 years. I should be this. I should be that. Who says? Because in that 10 years, what have you been doing? How have you been hindering or helping yourself, right? So the first thing I tell people right off the bat, and these are really simple things that have had it lays the foundation for your success, period, full stop. And if you want to laugh and say that, well, I've done those and that doesn't work, well, then you haven't done them consistently. You haven't done them that consistently. You just haven't. That's just the answer. So what's your sleep like, right? If you're not sleeping, we can break a human in 72 hours. We know that.
Yeah, we know that.
We know that. We know that. We have tested it.
I'm off the Ambien now too for those at home. So there's no more Ambien in my closet.
Right? But that's my point, is what's your sleep like? Are you on your phones before bed? Are you on screens before bed? How quickly do you eat before bed? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? Are you taking melatonin? Stop that. Are you wearing your orange glasses at night? What are orange glasses, Kelsey? Go on his Amazon, type in blue light orange lenses, grab those, put them on 3 hours before bed. Guess what happens?
Do you have a Amazon influencer link? Because if so, I'm going to post it for you.
No, but I feel like I should have a lot of things I've learned here today.
I know. We're gonna put together a post-military survival kit.
I'm telling you, we could make a box. We could make a business. I got you on lock. Trust. These glasses, when you put them on, they can't be blue light. They have to have an orange lens. What it does is you put them on about 3 hours before bed, and it will naturally tell your body it's nighttime, and your brain will kick in the melatonin, and you'll start to get tired quick.
Okay.
You can still be on your screens that way. I still don't want you on a screen an hour before bed, though.
Okay.
Right? So that's really important. Next, are you drinking? Are you doing drugs? Are you drinking to escape? And if are you, let's start writing down what you're trying to run from. Then let's talk about the dependency on the alcohol.
Do you drink alcohol at all?
Not anymore.
Wow.
No.
I think it's a trend right now for people to, which is a really good trend, that people are starting to realize the effects of alcohol. And there's like a really cool movement of sobriety where there's all these brands that are coming out that are alcohol-free drinks, so you can still enjoy with your friends. But it's okay, sorry.
No, it's awesome. All good. It's honestly, I used to, I never really drank. That was never a problem for me. I would have, I'm a big fan of like steak and red wine.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that would be if I'm going to drink, it's going to be that. And even then I'll probably still have that down the road. But right now what's happening for me is I'm working really hard on my brain injury. And I find that when I drink the next day, I'm just like, my brain doesn't work at all. It's beyond foggy. It's hard to describe. So we need to look at your alcohol. We need to look at your drugs. We need to look at your environment and what you're eating.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're eating processed food and you're eating takeout and you're doing all these things and you're not moving your body at all, okay, well, maybe we don't have a depression problem. Maybe we have a problem with serotonin in our gut because we're feeding ourselves such negatively processed food.
Wow.
Because 90% of that serotonin, it sits in your gut.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that because no joke, like even on Sunday this week, I really believe in transparency and honesty.
Yeah, so do I. So give it to me.
Sunday, I really struggled. I had a really hard time on Sunday. In fact, earlier there was somebody that came by. His name's Roger, Content CEO on Instagram, and he's one of my best friends here in LA. And if it wasn't for him, I would have had a really bad Sunday. I was crying all day. I had like a really, really low episode of just like deep, dark depression, which is not normal for me. That's not something that happens too much anymore. But for some reason, the last few days, Sunday being the worst day, I was so low. And him and I were going through this like checklist of like, kind of similar to how you were just doing, like what's been going on. I've been sleeping somewhat okay. But what I realized is I had like a week previous where it was almost every night I had, and I don't really drink alcohol too much, almost ever. And I had like a 7-day cycle of like a dinner or an event in a row where I was drinking. And I wonder if that was a trigger for me, but also I was eating like shit. Like I was eating terribly. We didn't go through the checklist of what did I eat, but it just made me think about that while you were just sharing like, your gut, because I was not treating my gut well. So I wonder if that has a lot to do with it.
It absolutely. I can tell you it 100% has a lot to do with it. 90% of your serotonin, right? 90%. Wow. So what you eat yesterday is going to affect you like today. And that's a big contributing factor. So you need to start looking right off the bat at all of these things and then your environment, right? So you can't take a fish out of a dirty fish tank, clean it all up, and then put it back in the fish tank that's dirty, right? Wow. We're gonna have the same problem. So what you need to do is you need to start looking at your environment, because people say, well, you're the sum of the 5 people around you. Let's take it like 10 steps further. You're the sum of the 5 podcasts, the 5 artists, the 5 shows, the 5 people, the 5 books. You are the sum of your environment. So if your environment is negative, angry, unhealthy, very just conflict oriented, if everything you're listening to is anything from Tucker Carlson to Fox News to just all the media, and you're just consuming and you're just digesting negative, and I love Tucker. I love his show. I think it's amazing. But my point is that it's heavy, right? That stuff is good, but sometimes it's heavy all the time, right? So like, that's why I cycle through podcasts, because I know I'm the sum of all of these things to some extent, and I can catch behavior based on what I've been listening to, being around, what I've eaten, and how I slept that week. I can tell you what's coming if I don't do it right. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that I tell people, you don't need for me to pay you to tell you this. These are all the things you need to start with. And if you genuinely go deep on that right there is going to tell you a lot of your answers. And here's the dirty little secret no one wants to tell you. Coaching isn't about fixing your life. It's about bringing it to the awareness.
Wow.
Once we're aware, now it's your job to decide, are you going to do something about it? Or are you just going to keep it pretending like you don't know?
Yeah.
Because once something's in the conscious mind, you have an obligation to make a decision. That makes people uncomfortable. So that's why people just prefer to avoid, and then they never really have to look at what's facing them. Well, I don't actually know. I don't think it's my food. It can't be my food. No, you're just avoiding the fact that you've been eating McDonald's and bullshit for 2 weeks, and that's actually why you're feeling what you're feeling.
You've been eating McDonald's and bullshit for 2 weeks.
That's right. But I do, and I say that to my clients. I don't have a problem telling them that. What have you done? You've been drinking, you've been doing this. What do you think's going to happen? And that's the other thing too, right? In this mental health space, everybody wants to hold everybody with kid gloves, and there's a time and a place for that. I had a time and a place where somebody had to hold me with kid gloves, for sure. Then there's a time and a place to say, okay, we've got you to here. You know what you're doing now. Yeah. Then why are you still doing it? Well, you got comfortable. And that felt easy for you. So you wanted to go back to being comfortable. Cool. I want to be comfortable too. But comfortability is going to be like your downfall. It's death. That's what it is.
So speaking of comfortable, I want to take a fun intermission with you because you brought some shots in.
Yeah. I drank mine.
Let's talk about these shots because you told me I'm going to be uncomfortable drinking this.
Yeah, and you should be because they're a real ketone.
Okay, so this is here a ketone IQ.
Yeah, ketone IQ.
And it says HVMN. What does that say?
Yeah, so HVMN, that was their company name. They changed it over to ketone IQ. So basically, they're ketone shots, and you don't have to be in ketosis to have them or anything like that. I'm an athlete. I use them for every time before I podcast, I use them. The cognitive development is really amazing. They actually designed this alongside DARPA with National Defense. So it works for special operations for days outside the wire kind of thing. And it's a ketone. So, your body works on glucose and then it switches to ketones. So it puts you into ketosis. And it's a pretty amazing product. I like it a lot. I used it before they paid me to use it.
Wow. Okay. So on the label here, since it's going to be kind of hard for you guys to see, so it says energy, focus, athletic performance, and appetite control. So I'm going to go for it. Do you take the whole thing?
Yeah. Shot it like a shot.
All right. And you already drank yours?
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. Okay. I was hoping to cheers you and pump.
Here, I'll cheers you. We can cheers anyway.
Cheers for our cheers for our ketone IQ.
Because they're amazing.
Cheers. All right. And I have never had this before. So this is a total.
All the way.
All right.
No, don't do it that way.
Oh, that is nasty.
In the mouth. Okay. Let's go. There she goes.
Ketone IQ. I hope that the performance of the product is there because that was nasty.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's with me everywhere I go because it works.
All right. Well, we're going to give it a shot. Hopefully by the end of the episode here, I'm going to be on cloud 9, but.
Well, what happens really is it just opens up cognitively and the energy is there. So when I'm doing I do the World Grand Fondo road bike race from where is it? Where do we go? Vancouver to Whistler.
Oh, wow. Oh, and Whistler's cool.
Yeah. I live really close to it. I love it. And so that's what I use. I don't use gels or anything else like that. I just use these.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what they're for.
So brass and unity, I want to unpack this a little bit, but first I want to call out also. So I'm wearing this fabulous jewelry here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's bullet casings, which is the coolest thing ever. It just magnetizes out. This is the coolest jewelry ever. I've got on this dope bracelet. Also has a little bullet casing on there, and then my earrings, which are so dope. I did not come to set like this. These are gifts from Kelsey and her brand, Brass and Unity. So go check out her jewelry line because this is insane. Your, I don't know if the camera is going to be able to pick up your,
this one?
Your necklace. I saw her necklace right as she came on set. It's if you're a girl, come on, that is the dopest necklace I've ever seen. I'm going to immediately go buy one after the show. That's really, really cool. So nice work. Yeah, what got you into jewelry?
Art therapy.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't I wanted to be a jeweler. I was a tomboy. I didn't wear jewelry.
Yeah.
I was the person who got out who or as a teenager had big spacers, the big 1/2-inch spacers in my ears.
No way.
Yeah. This one's still permanently spaced out. So, I was that person, the emo, screamo music, As I Lay Dying.
I just cannot picture you like this.
Yeah, oh yeah. For real. I had 3 tongue piercings, I had the nose piercing, I had 20 earrings. I was a vibe.
Wow.
Yeah, big transition. No pun intended. So yeah, I definitely was never the jeweler, but I was doing, my doctor suggested art therapy. He's like, why don't we try to get your hands busy? Because I was just so suicidal. I just couldn't get out of my own way. I was just so sick for a really long time. And somebody sent some casings to the house. And then I went to the bead store and I was like, how do I do this? And they're like, what do you want to make? I'm like, some bracelets. They're like, cool. So I bought some beads. My husband got me a little pipe cutter from Home Depot where you guys have a Lowe's. And then I would take the casing and I would grab it with a pair of pliers and then I would cut the end off and then I'd hammer it smooth and chamfer the edges and pop out a firing pin and then I'd string it on a bead bracelet. And I called them the Warrior bracelet. And I started with those. And then I just started going to local stores and seeing if they wanted to buy them. I started a company from ground up with having, just graduating high school, not having any business experience. But my father-in-law used to work and own the Canadian arm of Mechanics Wear Gloves. And my husband owns Atlas neck brace and Matrix. So they all have company experience. So they just kind of were like, okay, you're going to need this, you're going to need that. And I just kind of learned on the fly. And I started knocking on doors and, signing retailers and then started producing product on my own in 2015. And then I met with Kevin Hart in 2016. My mom was driving a transport truck for his What Now tour. And he met with me in Vancouver. And at the time, it was called Her Wearables. And I write about it in the book. But he said to me, Kelsey, if you want this to succeed, you need to make it a unisex name product. And we're like, ugh, yeah.
Oh, why are you right, Kevin Hart?
Damn it, Kevin
Why are you
Hart.
right?
I am taller than you, but why are you right?
I find that actually crazy because
You're very the same height.
How tall are you?
I'm only 5'8". He's like 5'3", so he's got a little height.
I'm 5'9", and when you walked in the door, because this episode's the first time we've met, when you walked in the door, I was like, damn, you are little.
I am little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like little and mighty.
Yes.
I will add, she's mighty.
Something like that. But he said that, and so we were like, okay. And so he tweeted it out that night, and then we changed the name and incorporated it under Brass and Unity in 2016. And then we've been going ever since. After that, we worked with Beth Bears, and we had it on everyone from like Julianne Hough to Michael Bublé, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Whitney Cummings. All these people were wearing the product, and it was an amazing experience to grow something from that and just kind of go up. And then we started getting nominated for fashion awards in Canada, and we were in Elle and Fashion Magazine, and just all of these really crazy opportunities came up. And I hand signed every store, and then COVID happened. And we lost almost the entire business overnight. And we had to pivot to an online company, which was new for me. And, out of those 200 retailers, like only 10 came back.
Wow.
Because they just didn't survive.
Right.
And so now we ship direct all over the world. And how it works is when you buy the product, wherever you're from, the donation stays in that country.
Oh, I didn't. So tell me about the donation.
Yeah, so we donate 20% of the net proceeds to these different organizations that I work with, like, Boot Campaign, Defenders of Freedom, Heroic Hearts Project. Yeah.
You probably didn't know this, but every single episode I talk about charity.
Okay.
So this is like so perfect.
Yeah, they're my people. It's the only reason I started the company. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. And I didn't want to start a nonprofit because I didn't want to ask for money because I don't know how. I'm not very good. I'm not like that person. So I was like, if I could create a product, then I could be the vehicle that puts the money in the hands of the charities, that creates like this community around it. And then I can break into the civilian world and teach them about what veterans go through and first responders go through, using jewelry as like the touch point and like the conversation starter. And that's why that black bracelet, like that's what we started with. That's called the buddy check system because they come in a pack of two. They promote accountability on the person that's giving you the pack. So it's like you buy a pack, you call a buddy, save a life. Now you don't rely on the VA and everyone else. You rely on that person right there. You have a connection with that one person. Now that person is your responsibility. And it may seem like a small thing, but you'd be surprised. We sold over 20,000 units of these for a reason. Like this bracelet works. I've had somebody who said, I reached for a gun and I saw it on my wrist and I stopped because I knew my buddy would be pissed.
Oh, wow.
It's like, it doesn't take much. And many of those stories for you to go, okay, we've got something here. And yes, it's a jewelry product, but the majority of people wearing these rope bracelets are men.
Yeah.
And they're special forces men. And they're people all over the world. And I'm proud of that because then that means I got somebody to have a hard conversation and be vulnerable about a topic that they normally never would have.
I'm blown away right now because I actually didn't know this about the bracelet when you gave it to me.
Yeah.
This
Hence why I gave it to you.
Thank you. This means a lot. It really does. When I was over in Afghanistan, we had probably similar to you, these really crappy little billets. Like they were just like pressboard wood that we built temporary structures. Right?
Yeah.
Right next to us, we had a guy, I think he was from Nebraska, commit suicide in his hooch. And hooch, for you that aren't in the military, is just like your little hut, your home. But he shot himself with his M4, and we were all right there.
Yeah,
we were literally on the other side of that pressboard wood.
Yeah,
and I'll never forget that because he was right there.
Yeah,
he was right there. And if he had just come outside and let us know that he was having a hard time, we would have all helped him out.
Right.
And so. This is really, really cool that you would have something like this to help promote the message that they're not alone, and you are not alone at home. If you're watching this, if you're having any kind of suicidal thoughts or having a hard day, please reach out. I'm hopefully not going to speak for you, but I know I'm willing to talk to you. I'm sure Kelsey
I answer DMs. It's out of control.
Send us a DM. But you are not alone. Very much like Sunday when I was feeling pretty alone, I had Roger. I made sure to reach out to Roger when we connected, and pick somebody around you that you trust, and reach out. And if you don't trust anybody, reach out. We'll be your trusted place. So thank you for having this. It's really cool. Where can people find this?
Just at brassandunity.com. Yeah.
Wow.
You have them all over the place.
This is so cool. Like I knew you were really cool, but like this is like next level cool. And what I really appreciate about this jewelry too is you actually said something before we started filming where you were saying that it's sometimes challenging to get certain people to wear the jewelry because it has a bullet on it. Yep. And within our society today, with the conversation around like gun crime and gun control and all of that, like it can be really hard to get any public figure to commit to wearing something that can be so controversial. But I think what is really key to take away from this jewelry is that you're literally turning something that could be perceived as very negative into the most beautiful thing. And it has a lot of meaning, especially for folks that have been in the military or even, you talk about our police force, right?
Yeah,
like
a lot of first responders.
When they're shooting, and by the way, shooting is also a sport, right? So you're turning this thing into something really, really powerful and beautiful and meaningful. And so I just want, anybody that's watching this that, has any type of negative connotation about bullet jewelry, like you should not. This is very meaningful to us.
Yeah, it's not. And it's not the bullet. Like we have stuff that doesn't have the bullet. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're not wearing it to support a bullet. You're wearing it because of what it means. Yeah. And I like, some people maybe don't care, but like what I wear has to matter and mean to me. Everything I wear means something. Like this hat means something. Like what I wear means something. It's saying something about me. And so everything I do is really well thought out and really strategically made and done and put into place at a certain, I'm really hyper aware of everything. Dan Holloway made fun of me last time I was down there, and he's like, your hair is always done. Your nails are always done. I said, yeah, they are. Because I want to show up, and I want to show up to the world the way I want to be seen, not the way I was seen, not the way that the stories were told about me, not the Amy is.
Yeah.
I get to dictate that now.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So I take that power back, and I get to be the complete opposite of the way that I had to be, which was no tattoos, no nails, no jewelry, no piercings, no this, no that. And now I'm the complete opposite. And so that's why people are shocked. It's like, well, don't be shocked. I was that person, but we have chapters in our life, and you change and you evolve and you grow into these things when you learn new habits and behaviors. And what I learned is that I actually love myself, and that I actually do have value, and I do have worth, and I have no fucking problem saying it now. People get intimidated and uncomfortable with that because I show up, I'm very verbose, I wear a big hat, I have big bright nails, all of these things, but I'm not afraid to be who I am anymore. The only difference is it just makes weak men uncomfortable, and it makes others who feel a certain type of way uncomfortable. But what you have to realize, and when that happens, and when you show up and what you wear is a representation of how you feel about your life, when you're doing that, when somebody else has a feeling about that or something to say about it, that's not about you. You're just the mirror. You're just the reflection to them of the thing that they're not brave enough to be, so to true. Do, or anything along those lines. So you take it with a grain of salt, lean harder into who you are, more people will resonate with that. So your jewelry is no different than the bag you carry, the shoes you wear, and the shirt you choose to wear. So I pick what I wear really strategically because it all matters and means something. And that's what I've wanted for this brand. We're not fast fashion. People are like, when are you coming out with new product? I'm like, when this stuff sells out. I'm not making something just so that you have something new. Go to H&M for that. Go somewhere else for that. My product is meant to last. My product is meant to stand the test of time. My product's supposed to be handed down. This stuff matters. And so you can show up and say, I'm going to wear, this jewelry or that, or this piece or that. But ultimately, just put more thought into your life. And it comes down to being conscious, right? So I'm just a conscious person now. And before...
He's grumpy.
Sorry. That's okay. And before, I wasn't a conscious person. I was somebody who was medicated, who didn't know who I was, who didn't love myself. So I just went with status quo. I'm just not status quo anymore. That's the difference.
Powerful. Yeah. Sorry, Charlie is making an entrance here.
That's okay.
Charlie, you got to be chill.
Did you have a bad dream, or is there people outside?
I think he's such a good guard dog.
You know what? You can't be mad about that. You can't even be disappointed with that.
I'm not. He's a good guard dog for sure.
He's so sweet,
Maybe
though.
He'll go back down there and chill. He's like, okay, I'm done now.
I just needed to let everyone know I was here in this episode.
Can you not interrupt? Like, broski.
It happens.
There we go.
It's okay.
There we go.
I know it's scary out there, isn't it? Oh, big yawn. There it is.
What a guy.
What
a guy. So for the coaching element of your Brass and Unity brand, Tell me a little bit about that. You know, how do you support people?
Yeah. So I do a lot of different things with it, which is really kind of fun. I'm a somatic breathwork practitioner, and I'm a psychedelic integration coach for Heroic Hearts Project. And I also do that in my own practice. So I mainly do mindset and transformation. So I work with like professional athletes and CEOs. And then I work with like mom and like who's struggling with, you know, mother's guilt and like going out and looking after herself. And then I work with people who are like, I'm transitioning out of the military. I'm working on this business. I don't know how to balance, you know, there's a lot of different things that I do, but mainly, you know, I have a community that people can become a part of where we do group coaching, which is really easy. It's like $99 a month, but yeah, so that's a resource that we offer that we've been doing for a couple of years now. And then I have programs, and I have one-on-one. So like I have programs, like right now I'm just launching a new one. It's called Shattering Limiting Beliefs. It's like a one-time thing, but it's a self-led program for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And it literally helps you look at your life, look at your mental state and go, what am I doing to hold myself back? How can I do better? How can I move forward? What are the tools I can use? And how can I implement those into my life and make them an actionable part of who I am now?
Wow.
And then I do one-on-one work. So I do a 6-month minimum, and I do moderate or intensive, or I do 12-month moderate or intensive. And it means you work with me weekly, and we work on everything that you're trying to achieve, whether that's changing professions, whether that's going for a new goal, whether that's going through a transition in your life from being, you know, a single parent to, you know, having a bunch of kids, or becoming a mom all of a sudden and not knowing how to know who you are, and you lose your identity a bit with that, right? And then you go, well, I have mom guilt and I don't want to look after myself. Then you stop taking care of yourself, then you stop feeling well, then you get depression, and we go down this cycle. So, you know, I work with a lot of people when it comes down to his mindset. And one of the most powerful tools we have in our toolbox all of the time is breath. And I think it's one of the most underutilized tools, as well as just like modalities for healing. And so I'm a big believer. I've never been on a pharmaceutical drug since I did psychedelics. And I'm a massive believer in psychedelics when they're done in the right set and setting.
Which type of psychedelics did you try?
Well, it depends on what you need, right? So for me, ayahuasca, psilocybin, and cannabis as well. What was the last one? Yeah, I don't want to discuss that one yet. So ayahuasca is predominantly the one that I've been using for trauma healing.
Would you recommend it to others?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But the thing you got to remember is like, what are you recommending? So not everybody's a candidate for psychedelics. Okay. Let's just start with that. If you're on an SSRI, that's a hard no. Some people will say, well, it's kind of fine. It's not fine. It's not fine because it can have serotonin reuptake issues. It's a problem. So you can look at that. You can also look at people's lives, right? Who in your family, does anybody have schizophrenia, bipolar? Are they in immediate relation? We need to just be careful because some psychedelics can affect people differently. And then you look at things like psilocybin. Well, psilocybin's great for neuron regeneration, right? And it's really great for antidepressant properties. So I did a clinical trial in Canada in November of last year. I'm one of 160 Canadians that has the legal right under this thing called the Special Access Program for regulated psilocybin.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to go through this massive process. It's normally for like terminally ill or treatment resistant. Now, Canada's answer to treatment resistant depression was medication. Ready for this? Before they were willing to give me access to mushrooms, do you want to know what they asked me? This is going to break your brain a little bit.
Oh, I don't even have a fathom.
They said, okay, but before we give her access, we want her to try electroshock therapy.
No, stop.
Yep. That's Health Canada's regimen.
Wait, isn't this like what they did in like the 1940s?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really outdated treatment, right?
Well, it gets worse. So when we said, no, she has a traumatic brain injury, the doctor said, it's okay. We'll manage the epilepsy when she throws a fit, when she's under.
No way.
Yes. And I said, I'm not doing that.
Oh my gosh. So
I did the clinical trial. So I sat with one of the first macro doses of synthetic psilocybin.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it was pretty fantastic. And I used cannabis for sleep. I've been on cannabis since, using cannabis since 2000, I think 16, 17.
For the, I don't know how it is in Canada, but they break it in, and this is definitely my ignorance showing.
I'm okay.
Admitting here, I am not an expert in any of these spaces, which is why I'm so happy to talk to you about it. But for the marijuana side of things, cannabis side of things, is it indica or sativa? So that you use for sleep?
So I'm going to give you the best, you're never going to forget this, Indicouch.
Okay.
Sleepy time. Indicouch.
Okay.
Sativas for, yay! So yeah, indica. So I use indica, but I use oils and I use different strains depending on what I'm trying to achieve. If I'm trying to fall asleep, if I'm struggling with nightmares, I use that to get off of sleep medication.
Got it.
And then I never went back on.
Wow.
And then I went off of my last SSRI in 2019 and I did ayahuasca and I think it was 2020. I did it with Heroic Hearts Project, which is founded by a former Army Ranger named Jesse Gould. And amazing.
I think I just reached out to Jesse.
Oh, I'll hook that
recently.
Up. I got you.
No, I think I already
Did you get him?
I think we already connected.
Perfect.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I feel terrible. I'm gonna forget her name, but there's a woman here in Southern California, and her husband was a British SAS operator.
Alana?
What's a Stott?
Yeah,
Alana
she's one
Stott.
of my best friends.
Yes. So I think that's how we got connected, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, and she was mentioning to me that I should go to this course.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. The dots are coming together.
Yeah.
Again.
Dean and Alana.
Yeah. So, and they're actually coming on the show. Both
Perfect.
of them. Yeah. I just got their books.
Are you doing them separately?
I'm going to do them separately, but I want to do them together as well.
Yeah, do them separately though.
Yeah.
Because Alana, when you read her book, your brain's going to explode.
Yeah, I'm actually working on it right now. I just got them in the mail.
Did you start it?
Dean sent them to me. Yeah, I'm only a couple pages deep because I'm finishing another book. But yeah, I mean, she's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love them. So stay tuned for that episode coming up. We're actually going to film it here. So it's we're at Studio Place, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, she's great. I love Alana. They actually are in my book as well. They helped me move my Afghan family when we were involved in the pullout.
Wow.
So we got 9 VIP men and women that were part of the Afghan government to Canada.
Wow.
When Canada decided they weren't going to help anyone and abandon everyone. So
I had a similar story. Oh gosh, what rank was she? My colonel, was she colonel? No, my major, that was part of my unit. She sponsored our translator and my translator's family to come over at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah. So
yeah,
terrible.
it's a wild thing, but Dean and Alana have a very unique relationship. Dean being a contractor with the Netflix series coming out, but then also with kind of what he does in the back end and then what Alana does in the back end that people don't really know much about, which is the human trafficking side of things and whatnot, and her past and, being a member of the British Empire. She's a beast. She's a beast all on her own. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. She definitely deserves a full episode. I'll tell you that. You'll enjoy that.
Yeah.
She's very soft spoken.
I wish she could come to dinner with us tonight. That would be fun.
She just had, she's, I don't think she can.
No, I know. I reached out, but I can't wait to get her. To get her on the show. That's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
So where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much everywhere. If you just type in my name somewhere, it'll pop. At this point, it's Google's easy, but normally Instagram. Yeah, just Kelsi_Sheren, brassandunity.com. If you want to work with me, if you want any of the programs, it's KelseySheren.com. If you want to book me for a speaker, because I do a lot of keynotes, KelseySheren.com. But yeah, I answer kind of all over the place. I got a lot of platforms that kind of run simultaneously, and I do my best to answer everything.
Wow. Well, we're definitely going to have multiple episodes for sure.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack here. I actually kind of want to, I'm going to go do a ayahuasca retreat at some point. I don't have it booked yet, but that's something that I want to do here pretty soon. And I know there's some rules around filming at certain places that you go, but one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about right now is people being able to understand what it's like, because I don't know what it's like. And that's been one of the reasons that's held me back from getting treatment. Is it's been like, I don't want to do medicine anymore because I had a hard time with that while I was in the military. I was on medication for a long time. But I really want to try like a more natural approach, like doing some psilocybin and stuff for treatment. And the VA is luckily coming out with programs finally, but it's still hard to access them. And it's still hard to get to them. So I want to do one that's kind of through one of the nonprofits. Yeah,
I would go through HHP. They have one of the best integration programs there. And ultimately that's, more than half of it, right? So you're doing the integration on the front end, making sure you're a candidate. You do the integration with a coach where you work one-on-one and you work with the group that you're going to sit with, and you do 3 sessions at the beginning, and then you go and you do the medicine, you come back and then you do the same. So the integration part is one of the key components to not only having an intention in what you're going into, because that's what you do need to have. And then when you come out, it's like resettling you back in. And how do we integrate everything that you just learned in that into your life now to make that a permanent and a new state, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to read your book. I have not read your book yet, but for you at home, you can get her book online, Brass and Unity.
Yes.
I'm super excited. It says One Woman's Journey Through the Hell of Afghanistan and Back. And I'm so enamored by you and your journey. And, you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier. I just got out 2 years ago. I did switch to National Guard, so I've had a little bit more civilian time alongside National Guard. But, I still definitely am on like the beginning side of my healing journey, which is why I have this show, because I have all these different guests that come on that literally are experts in the space of transition and, healing and all of that, with the intent, not just to only help myself as I'm going through this process, but like share it with other veterans at home. So I'm so stoked. Go reach out and connect with Kelsey. Go watch her Jordan Peterson episode that also just launched. Big shout out to that. Can't wait to have you back.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and your story and your energy and tips with us. I cannot wait to do this again with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anytime.
All right, stay tuned. Go subscribe, hit the subscribe button and follow, and go reach out to Kelsey as well. Thanks so much. Talk to you guys later.